Hey guys, I'm Sherry. I'm a manager here at Vivint. So I'm going to talk to you guys about how to handle objections. Before we get into the specifics, first we have to look at the mindset when handling an objection. Objections are not bad. They are just questions in the form of a complaint from the customer. Something as simple as, I can't afford this, is the customer trying to tell you that I don't think that the value is there, and now it's your job to show them. Now, another thing we have to understand when it comes to the mindset of the objection, remember a majority of objections are generally smoke screens. On average, a salesperson on their 5th attempt to close the deal is where a majority of their sales will occur. So remember that on the first, second objection, generally those are just smoke screens. Those are customers just trying to get you off the door because they don't want to spend the time. And the biggest hurdle in any single sale is time and trust. So if you can gain trust from these customers by referencing the neighbors across the street, pointing at signs, and of course, gaining their trust will allow you to get some time from them to present your opportunity, you're more likely to go in. So do not shy away by handling the objections the first few times. I would say at least 5 times is a good rule of thumb. And you cannot ever get upset when the customer objects to you. If anything, always stay calm. If you don't make it a big deal, the customer will not make it a big deal. And I usually follow this rule of thumb when handling any objection. And there's 3 steps. The first one, if you can, is always bring the objection up before the customer can. That is the best position to be in, because now you've avoided the objection before it can come up. Something as simple as like, hey, the reason I came by is I noticed you had ADT. We're looking for people like yourself that are security cautious. What that allows you to do is now let the customer know that I already know that you have an alarm system. And if anything, that is the reason why I even chose to talk to you, because it lets me know that you value your security. The customer can no longer say, hey, I already have an alarm system, because you were able to bring it up before they did. Now, if you cannot do that, with some objections, something like not interested, you can't bring it up before them because you're not expecting it. You're hoping that it just doesn't come up. For the second rule of thumb, if you cannot bring it up before them, you will agree with the objection. You will say, yeah, I totally understand. This is why the neighbors have been getting it. So your job is to agree with the objection and then re-loop back to what you were saying. And that could mean anything. Like, hey, I'm a little busy. Hey, I totally understand. Timing's the hardest thing about my job. I'll be super quick, right? So there I agreed with the customer on them being busy. I agreed how timing is really hard to nail. And then lastly, I re-looped and said, hey, I'll be super quick. And I continued back with what I was saying. And so the third one is you will porcupine with a question, where you will just respond with a question, giving the control back to yourself. The customer's like, how much do you think this would cost? You can say, well, how much do you think a smart home like this would cost you with all the bells or whistles? And now they have to answer your question in comparison to you telling them what the price is on the door, which I'm pretty sure your manager has told you never to do. Another thing you have to remember is that on the door, you're a pest. In the house, you're a guest. So many times on the door, the customer will object you a few times, saying something like, I'm not interested, multiple times throughout the pitch. Remember that your job is not to sell them at the door whatsoever. So in that scenario, I would just relieve as much buying pressure as possible. I'd let the customer know that they do not have to decide today, that my job is just to write it down for them and give them a quote so they can understand why all the neighbors have been getting it out here. And once you're in the home, you have gained their trust, you are their guest, they're more likely to pay attention, respect what you're saying. And once you can show them a really good offering, a majority of customers are more likely to then buy. And you have more time to build the urgency through the rest of your process rather than just trying to tell them that they have to decide on the door. Even saying things like the technician is right around the corner, I'd say applies buying pressure to the customer. So I would consider a pitch more of like a football field and a football play. Not every single throw is gonna be a 100-yard pass, meaning not every pitch that you're gonna make is gonna be without objections. The customer's just gonna want it and listen to you. Many times you're just earning a couple yards. You're trying to get a little bit further in your pitch. And how do you do that? By overcoming these hurdles and objections that you're constantly getting at least 2 to 3 or 4 times in the pitch. Because at the end of the day, your job is to get into the house. May that be without any objections, or even if you had to overcome a few, the outcome will then be the same. All right guys, so when it comes to the not interested objection, you can expect this to come in your pitch, not just once, but multiple times. Everybody should know at least one reply to this pitch, which your manager should probably have told you, which is, "That's fine, just so you know." And that'll work the first time, but if you consistently say it, the customer gets the impression that you're ignoring the fact that they're not interested and constantly recycling the same objection. So the first time the customer says that they're not interested is going to be very early on. You can expect it probably as soon as you open the door and just mention that you're with Vivint and your name. And customers will be like, they're not interested. To that, you can say, "That's fine, just so you know," because it is a smokescreen. The customer has no reason to not be interested. The reason they're not interested is because they just don't want to hear you out. And you will go past that. We call it bulldozing past the objection, where you don't spend too much time on it. The next time you can expect to get that is as soon as you tell them the products and services that you are selling. With something like, "Hey, we make the cameras, locks, thermostats in the neighborhood." The customer is now thinking, "Hey, this person's here to sell me this." And you'll hear something like, "I'm not interested." I generally would never say, "That's fine, just so you know," because I've already said it. At this point, I'll be like, "Yeah, don't worry, you do not have to make a decision today." And what that does is now relieve buying pressure for the customer, allows them to listen to you a little bit more. And then lastly, you'll get not interested right before you're about to transition. And to that, I will tell the customer right before I'm about to transition, they've seen the product, they've seen the app, they know the deal, they understand what I'm doing. So saying, "That's fine, just so you know," won't really help you. So at this point, you will agree with the customer. You'll say, "I totally understand, Mr. Customer. If you were interested, you would probably already have this stuff." My job is not to pick people here that are interested. It's to set up people just like you that aren't gonna spend an arm and a leg for this in the store. Now, you can shoot me straight. If we pick the home and we knock the deal out of the park, you'd probably use something like this, right? And if you loved it, you tell a friend or family. And if they reply yes to that, you would say, "Hey, well, if that's the case, my job is just to write it down for you. You have somewhere to sit." And you'll lean forward and try to transition. So now you acknowledge the customer's objection, agreed with them, and came from a place that's kind of different, where you're like, "Hey, I understand. If you were interested, you'd already have it. My job is a little bit different. It's to give you the best deal you could possibly get." And customers can get more bought into that idea. And if they are actually interested, they will let you inside the house. But without doing that, and if you're leaving earlier on, you're not maximizing the full potential of every single pitch. All right, guys, my challenge to you is write down 3 replies to every single possible objection that you are getting on the doors. The way to find this is by going to your manager or any top performer in your office and asking them what could be 3 possible replies. I'm sure you probably already have 1 or maybe 2 of these, but having a bigger arsenal of replies to the same objection will increase your chances of closing that prospect. Secondly, I need everybody watching this to go buy from Amazon the book, The Psychology of Sales by Brian Tracy. From there, you can also find many objections and many replies to objections that you are getting on a daily basis that you probably can't find from your manager or the top performer.